Washington, come one and all. Welcome to the District of Columbia. Welcome to Washington, D.C. This is the place where dreams come true. Yes, the capital of the United States. We'll enter the heart of our nation. We'll see where our bills become law. We'll visit the side of the White House and monuments that bring awe. Well, the national capital is not in any state. No favorites are made, no state can overtake. Located on the banks where the Potomac River flows. Where? Between Maryland and Virginia, Congress goes to be the spot for the country's headquarters. President Washington mapped out the borders. Welcome to Washington, D.C. This is the place where dreams come true. Yes, the capital of the United States. We'll enter the heart of our nation. We'll see where our bills become law. We'll visit the side of the White House and monuments that bring awe. United States.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. To secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just power from the consent of the governed. Preamble to the Declaration of Independence, July 4th, 1776. D.C. Statehood. Recently, D.C. residents have complained about taxation without representation. People who live in D.C. pay the second highest per capita federal income tax in the country, but have no vote on how the federal government spends their tax dollars and no vote on important issues. For the past several years, D.C. license plates have taxation without representation. The Leadership Conference outlines in its website, "Well, it's the only democracy in the entire world where the residents of the capital have no vote in Congress. Of all the capitals in all the world's democracies, only Washington, D.C. doesn't have the voting representation or real home rule. Taxation without representation. It's still a fact of life in Washington, D.C. Most Americans take it for granted that they have representatives in Congress who speak out and stand up for their interests and values. But residents of our nation's capital, Washington, D.C., still don't have this basic democratic right. The district's only voice in Congress is a non-voting delegate, Eleanor Holmes Norton, who serves in the House of Representatives but is not permitted to vote on the floor of Congress. Despite the federal taxes they pay, the wars they fight in, and the other obligations of citizenship that they perform, residents of Washington, D.C. simply do not have the basic American right of voting representation in Congress. Why are the residents of our nation's capital denied voting representation in Congress in the same measure of home rule as other Americans? This denial of basic democratic rights began because instead of being part of a state, Washington, D.C. was a federal district, the District of Columbia. This Washington Post article outlines how President Obama decided to use D.C.'s taxation without representation license plates. This comes to show that Obama is one of the only presidents in the U.S. history to support D.C.'s fight for statehood. Interestingly enough, there's a bar in Washington, D.C. that has taxation without representation in their receipts. The hashtag DC Statehood has also been popularized in DC's statehood movement. Neighbors United for DC Statehood use the hashtag. This picture, No Vote, No Voice, Support DC Statehood, you can see the hashtag being used in an adaptation of the DC flag. Why don't the residents of America's capital have full voting rights? Here the hashtag DC Statehood is used as well. During the most recent GOP debate, citizens of Washington, D.C. have used the hashtag DC Statehood to show their support for the movement. What about taking money from the citizens of the district without granting us equal representation? Hashtag DC Statehood. Government Mike Huckabee is right. DC doesn't play by the same rules as the rest of the country because it can't. Give us hashtag DC Statehood. With a population greater than 2 states, how can the candidates justify disenfranchising 658,000 U.S. citizens? Hashtag DC Statehood. In another Twitter post, a website that advocates for DC statehood posted a potential tattoo under the hashtag DC Statehood. Last but not least, John Oliver produced a video, and this person seems to highlight it under the hashtag DC Statehood. Another way in which DC is trying to support its movement towards statehood is by using the phrase, the 51st state. In the website New Columbia Vision, the 51st state is used. In the Daily Calendar News Foundation, the 51st state is also used. The website Neighbors United for DC Statehood used the51ststate.org as their web address. The website New Columbia uses 51st State as its logo. It also has information about the 51st State. On Facebook, there is a group titled Friends of the 51st State. New Columbia is also another way to refer to the fight for DC statehood. It would be Washington, D.C., except it would be called New Columbia. Here, this would be Washington, D.C., and it would be a district controlled by the government. It would include the National Mall, the White House, all the Smithsonian museums, and the Capitol building. DC.gov shows information about New Columbia and a commission that was established. DC Delegate Eleanor Norton introduced a bill to the House of Representatives that would grant DC statehood and would create the state of New Columbia. New Columbia Vision also makes use of the phrase New Columbia. New Columbia is a city and future 51st state where more than 650,000 residents of the District of Columbia live. DC residents are tired of being second-class citizens, and it is up to us to decide on their fate. Contact your House representative and your senator and ask them to support the New Columbia Admission Act. DC statehood has been an ongoing campaign, and it is time to give DC residents what they want. It is time to give them DC statehood.